Today is Friday, the 3rd of March, 2023. Tomorrow is Saturday, the 4th of March. Tomorrow is World Obesity Day, celebrated worldwide. And we want to have a conversation about obesity in Kenya. We have two guests who joined us in the studio. Odawa Vivianne is a radiographer and a champion for healthy living. And Stephen Tanui is a strategy and development manager at Wellness for Greatness Kenya. Good morning.
Good morning.
Karibuni sana to the Situation Room. Those are the hot seats of Kenya's biggest conversation. It's a privilege to have you here.
Thank you.
We're going to talk about obesity. You'll, of course, explain to us what all that is, and you'll be telling us about wellness and greatness and championing for healthy living and all. But let's start with a proverb from Uganda. City?
Yes, the whole of this week, our proverbs have been from the country of Uganda. This is our final day. And the proverb is a really simple one, simple, straightforward. A foolish person shouldn't make you foolish.
A foolish person shouldn't make you foolish. Vivianne, what do you understand that proverb to be telling us?
Wow, a foolish person
Shouldn't make you foolish.
didn't make you
Meaning
foolish.
let them be foolish on their own.
Meaning I have a choice
Yes.
to be foolish or not.
Foolishness shouldn't be contagious.
Yes.
That's a good one as well. Foolishness should not be contagious. Is that what the Ugandans were saying, do you think, Stephen?
I believe so. Only good traits should be contagious, bad traits shouldn't be contagious.
Pick only the good traits.
You know, whenever people are referred to as foolish, people think it's an insult. It's actually not an insult. It's a description. A foolish person is somebody who has consistently shown an inability to make good judgment. When your decision-making process, for instance, you know that in the village there's what you call the village gossip or the village wag, and then you go and confide in them your deepest secrets. Now, surely, who are you going to blame when the whole village knows this thing that you thought was private? So, if someone refers to you as foolish, it'll be appropriate because your judgment is a little off.
And that's an insult, but it's a descriptive, but it's foolish.
Yes, it's descriptive, yes.
But
Not
it shouldn't
clever.
it shouldn't define you in terms of you can be foolish and sometimes you can now make the right decision. So it shouldn't be like a tag that you have. You're just foolish.
So foolishness is not permanent.
Yes.
One would hope.
Okay, let's dive into the conversation about obesity, and let's start by understanding where what you do and where you come from. Vivianne, you're a champion for healthy living and you're a radiographer. What's a champion for healthy living?
A champion for healthy living. I have a history. I know where I'm coming from with weight issues. I was tiny initially, then got babies, and I kept on ballooning, and there's this thing you say, it's in the family because everyone is big. Everyone, my dad is big, my mom is big, my siblings are big, until at some point I realized, like, no, something needs to happen, and something needed to be done. By then now I was weighing 123 kg. Yes. So since then, I've seen a change in even the self-esteem which people thought you.
Those
really
who can't see you
had.
now, can't really tell. So, how different is it today? So how?
What does 123 kg represent in terms of body mass and optics?
It really depends now on your height, since BMI is measured as a ratio of height and weight and height. So it depends on your height.
So you're 143 and you decided I need to change.
123. Yes.
You 123 rather, and
Eric, just give you 20, yes,
extra
so that you can.
So far I've lost
Margin of error.
30
Bonus.
So far you've lost 30.
kg, yes.
And this is within a period of how long?
Around 2 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have a target?
Yes, I do.
So when you say now you're a champion for healthy living, now you're bringing in the health aspect into the conversation that you've raised, which is about weight. Okay. So what is it about the weight that you had and the health that you had?
The weight that I had, actually, I couldn't even do the stairs easily. I'm a lecturer by profession, so anytime my students told me they're on first floor, I would ask them to go and look for a class on ground floor. You cannot get your clothes. Shoes was an issue. I had to go for wide fitting shoes, which you have to look for shops. I think many shops will actually ask you to leave your number. They'll call you, they never call. So you end up, you can get the clothes, and the clothes you have to tailor them. You know, there's nothing as painful as going to look for clothes, and the person who's selling looks at you and they're like, Mama, size yako huwa hatuna. Na hata kama iko, huwa ziko booked na ni zinaenda. And if you get one, you'll have to pay for it. So you get into a shop and someone looks at you and like, are you sure? Unatafuta yako. You feel so bad, but you can't talk. So one day it hit me when my last born daughter, who's 14, I'm a mother of 3 daughters. One died 1 year, 10 months ago. So the last one says, Mom is fat. Have you ever seen parents when they're coming to school? I think you're fat out of all those parents. So her sister was like, that is mean. That is mean. Yeah, let her go to the gym. Let her do something.
Wow.
And I looked at my daughter and I'm like, wow, okay. Okay. Because she speaks her mind. And my late girl was like, no, you can't tell Mom that. That is mean. She's like, no, let her do something. She doesn't look nice. And actually, it's not what I really wanted. I also felt like I didn't look okay. You know, when people look at you, oh, you're fat. Yeah, one time I went up country and someone looks at me, so you still maintain the big body.
That is not a greeting.
It means you're being taken care of well. And it hurt me. It hurt me, yeah. So when I talk of championing, this journey shouldn't be painful. And you shouldn't be like, you're denying yourself things, you know, like I'm not going to do this, I cannot eat this. It's supposed to be something that you're actually enjoying. Yeah, so how it started, just from social media, the way people post. There's a lady called Linda. So Linda would post and I would look at it and I'm like, So one morning during the COVID time, I was supposed to be on duty. It was my week. So I wake up in the morning and I'm looking at my clothes and I can't get something. I'm not finding something really to put on. So I went to the scale and I realized I'm 123. I said, wow. So funnily enough, Linda posts on her WhatsApp status. And I quickly text her. I'm like, is there a gym open? She says, yes, there's one. And she sends me the number to Mr. Oluchiri. And I called him and he told me, you come dressed to work out. And I'm like, no, I want us to talk. He's like, no, just come, let's start. So I went and Stephen remembers that day because I went with my daughter and I tried. I'm like, what are these people doing aerobics? I mean, what is all this? So I went back home and I have a good friend of mine, Mr. Hawala Sam. He calls himself Salt and Pepper. So he was not around the country, so I sent a text and I'm like, I'm from the gym. Because we had this conversation and he kept on like, have you done this? Have you tried walking? Have you tried exercising? Have you tried food portioning? Then he's like, my sister, you know what to do. So when I came back, he said, you know what? I wanted you to make the first move. So here we are. Now, you want to go to the gym, but how are you going? Do you have a target? So he sent me to go and write, and he said, yes, now we want to look at what you eat. You're going to eat everything, but in moderation and timed. You can't just be eating anytime you want. So when people say, no, I'll not eat chapati, for me, Saturdays, for me, it's chapati. I would still, it's not supposed to be something like I'm punishing myself.
Not a punishment.
Yes. So that's how I started, and kidogo, I look at my weight and it's going 3 kgs down. I look again, 5 kgs down. That's how the journey started.
Just from managing your food.
Managing my food.
Okay.
Managing my food and exercising. I exercise to an extent, like if I have to travel, the first thing that is going to determine where I'm going to stay, the hotel, is a gym. If I go to Mombasa, I know I have two. There's one in the middle of town, Legacy. I'll go there and I'll make sure my hotel is somewhere near. I remember I was in Kakamega one day and I woke up in the morning at 5 and I'm like, I need to work out. Then I went to Google and I see this one and Masinde Muliro. So I call and they tell me, you're open. I drove myself there.
So that's a journey that you've been, and that's why you're saying you're a champion for healthy living.
Yes.
Stephen, you work for Wellness for Greatness Kenya. What's that?
Wellness for Greatness Kenya is a non-profit registered as an NGO in Kenya, and we focus on promoting physical activity, consumption of healthy diets, and also NCD health literacy. So Vivianne's story really reflects what our organization is all about, because obesity is something that is not really considered a disease here in Kenya and also in sub-Saharan Africa. In the Western world, it's considered a chronic disease because it's really difficult to manage it. And as she rightly put it, sometimes the roots of obesity are issues like genetics, because 40 to 70% of your chances of getting obesity is actually in your genetics. So the root causes are varied. It's not just physical inactivity and eating unhealthy diets. It's something that's really valid, and the World Obesity Federation started the World Obesity Day so that we can change perspectives and talk about obesity, so that all this stigma that surrounds obesity can be talked about, and policymakers and the society can take a societal approach in trying to resolve the issue of obesity.
Stephen, can you look at someone and tell that they're obese?
Not necessarily. People would like to see that and relate appearance to obesity, but it's much more complex based on the root causes that causes obesity. But BMI, which is actually the most used method to classify weight categories, is reliable, but other researchers are using other tools such as waist circumference, the ratio of waist circumference to the height. It's something that's currently being researched, but BMI is the most widely used method. Yes.
So when do things, just looking at the progression, for us to have an understanding, when do things start, when do the alarm bells, start going off?
As Vivianne put it, it's actually really apparent that you're leading an unhealthy life. Even if you've not acquired obesity, there's some issues that you have, there's some health issues that you have that can relate, just like climbing the stairs, your strength, your endurance in terms of just walking and things like that. It becomes really difficult to just live. So it becomes really apparent when that now translates to your weight gain. And once it advances, obesity is actually the biggest risk factor to most non-communicable diseases such as diabetes, cardiovascular diseases, and some cancers. So eventually, it becomes a problem, and we can trace this to the time that we are children, because at that time we can't really relate physical activity and healthy eating to diseases. That's something I have a personal experience on, because when I was younger, you can't really relate that doing PE or eating healthy can one day help you not acquire some non-communicable diseases. This is something that Wellness for Greatness is trying to change, because our programs are geared towards schools. Once children understand that physical activity and healthy diets have a health component to it, they can be able to form lifelong behaviors that can take them into adulthood.
This journey, how does one start from being normal-bodied, if I may use such a term, and what are these habits that they acquire? I'm being granular here, that then gets you, because you don't put on weight in a day. Because that putting on weight is what leads to this obesity. So what are these things that one does? What are the contributing factors to this situation that gradually gets you to this position where now you actually have a health problem?
So I could classify that into two, because there are controllable factors and there are uncontrollable factors. Like I said before, genetics is nothing that it's not something that we can control, but controllable factors include physical activity and on the flip side, physical inactivity. So now when you're physically inactive, just as an example, it happens a lot in urban areas. You wake up in the morning, you get into your car, which is a few steps away from your house. You go to work, you come, sit down. You go for lunch just nearby. You come back, sit down. And then in the evening, you go back to your car and you go home. It's really surprising that you might find out that you have not even achieved 100 steps in just that full day, just as an example. So this physical inactivity and sedentary behavior, sitting down and watching the screen, playing video games, or even at work, you're just sitting down, looking at your computer screen. Such habits now come and take a toll because it's gradual. And it also relates to now eating unhealthy. Because probably at work, now you'll order junk food from KFC and you eat. And this now takes a toll. At home, in your fridge, you have carbonated drinks, you have processed foods. Just a combination of these controllable factors. If you change and start living a healthy life, your chances of getting obesity and overweight are actually really less.
Are you saying in a traditional setting where movement involved walking, so you're going to exercise whether you like it or not, economic activities involved physical exercise, that in these societies obesity did not exist?
Obesity was actually really, really less. If you look at the statistics, even going by the 1975 numbers, obesity was not an issue that affected a lot of people. But it's really growing because of urbanization. People in the rural areas they still do economic activities that are physical. They walk a lot and exercise a lot, which is actually incidental. Not necessarily that they're working out, but it's incidental. But in urban areas, the rate of obesity and overweight is skyrocketing, and this translates now to non-communicable diseases. Like we are seeing that cancer is becoming a huge problem. Diabetes is also becoming a huge problem, hypertension, all those issues. I'm sure even from our own personal experience, we can relate to someone in my family has high blood pressure, someone in my family has diabetes, something that's really common, but we really shun it in terms of looking at the root causes.
You know what is strange about non-communicable diseases? You will find that some of the places with some of the highest numbers of rates are actually counties that you could consider predominantly rural, not even urban. Just statistics.
Yes.
So perhaps the issue of lifestyle that you mentioned comes to the but then diet. Mm-hmm. How is it that if one is in a rural setting, which predominantly in this country is a farming setup, how does the diet change? Because if you live in a rural area, you're likely to be eating what people have been eating for the longest possible time.
It's actually a really tricky issue and very complex because, as you've rightly put it, for example, diabetes, one of the highest rates of diabetes in the country is in Garissa County. Not really necessarily an urban area, but I would really trace it to the kinds of foods that they eat. Because if you go to Garissa, I'm not sure, I've never been there, but I'm sure you won't see obesity as an issue in terms of appearances. But because of the diet that they take, probably something that should be researched on.
You know, the thing about research is that research seeks to respond to specific questions that perhaps don't have an adequate answer. And so it's specific, okay? Now, this matter of healthy living vis-a-vis obesity, it's something that is a dominant conversation in very, very many quarters. And probably because non-communicable diseases are now, at a point even in this country, competing very favorably with communicable diseases.
Yes.
So all these discussions take place. Now, what I want to understand is, how do you communicate to someone at a very early age that certain habits, certain ways of doing things will ensure that the predisposition that the opposite will provide is eliminated, so that even as you get on in life, all these problems that we are now speaking about and which we're having a conversation about now can be reduced, if not eliminated, if one thinks and then in so thinking does certain things to ensure that these things are not started.
Yes, it's a problem that, like I said, from my own personal experience, you really can't relate. So, Wellness for Greatness, we have a number of programs that address these issues. We have a program known as a CATCH, Coordinated Approach to Child Health, and we focus on the PE lesson as a method of reaching out to kids and enabling them to understand that there's a correlation between physical activity and healthy living. Let's not put it as non-communicable, it's just healthy living. And we are working with the Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development to adapt these curriculum materials to the school system. And what it does is that it helps foster a mindset that healthy living is something that they can adopt, and it can help their school performance and very mental health, very many other issues that are good for them.
Okay, so essentially what you're saying is that if one focuses on diets that are related to urban areas, fast foods, okay,
Yes.
processed foods,
Yes.
that these are things that one should perhaps not necessarily avoid, but one should consume in moderation.
Yes, they should actually reduce that. In the coordinated approach to child health, one of the methods that we use is we have 3 sets of foods. We have the go foods. These are foods that you should eat in plenty. We have the war foods. These are foods that you should not really eat in plenty, just in moderation, rightly as you've put it.
May I want to talk about these ones which you must eat in plenty?
The go foods.
The go foods.
These ones which are, yes, in motion.
And so the go foods should be whole grain foods, they should be fresh foods, I'm sure, and they should be cooked well. Vegetables and fruits, and they should also be cooked well, because one of the things that we noticed is that you are eating healthy food, but you're putting too much cooking oil, or you're using ingredients that eventually make that healthy food unhealthy.
You don't even have to ask, at what point is cooking oil too much? I mean,
It really depends, but I'm sure while you're cooking, you'd know. Even when you go to a hotel and it has too much cooking oil, you would know that the amount that you're supposed to take as a
Umejaza mafuta.
umejaza mafuta.
no, there's a converse, hii mafuta haijatosha. Sioni mafuta kwa hii kitu. Yes.
Chakula imepikwaje?
Yes.
But it's a general conversation that we should be interested in what we take into our body. So asking yourself such questions: how much cooking oil?
Fruits, whole grain.
Yes.
What is whole grain?
These are grains like maize, like beans.
But at what point is it whole and at what point is it not whole?
If it hasn't undergone any form of processing.
Okay. If it is ground, that's processing. So, or we should eat it as githeri, because then, apart from cooking, it's exactly as it was.
Nyoyo is good.
Yes.
Ugali not so good.
Yes.
There's terminology that one reads and hears about very often, but the definition of it. You will go to a supermarket and you'll be told this is whole meal bread.
Yes.
So when they tell me that, what am I supposed to expect is in that bread, which is not in other non-whole meal breads?
Yes.
I mean, I'm asking. The reason why I ask is because, for instance, if you spent time in your childhood as in the rural areas, as like some of us did, what you ate actually came from the farm more or less on a daily basis. You didn't go to buy vegetables; they were there. As for the ugali, there was a process of grinding the maize that you had. I mean, this process is something you saw. So this maize, which was ground and then ended up in the pot, that's whole meal.
Yes, that's whole meal.
But then if it's that healthy, then why is it then that what we consume is not this? And is it, okay, it's an economic question I'm asking, or a commercial question, but would it not be profitable to sell or this? Because if you tell me it is sifted maize, beyond grinding or grounding, it has gone through another process, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes. So
it really depends if you've done it in a posho mill where there are no chemical industrial processing. Yes.
So that is preferred.
That is preferred. But based on government regulation in terms of food policies, they should indicate clearly the kind of contents food every processed food has.
That one is tricky. They can write anything. How do you determine that? That one, I think this one
something that has been done in the Western world, and something.
If
that
they are
we're
caught
advocating.
having lied,
How often have we had people being caught? In the Western world, we understand. There are consumer bodies that actually do this and they determine, and they will catch you here.
see, because of the awareness of the consumer.
Awareness of the consumer.
And this is why Stephen is talking about, if we are aware as consumers, and if I get what you're saying, if we are aware as consumers that, we go for this kind of foods, we reduce on the processed foods, and even when we're going for processed foods, we find out what exactly is the ingredient of this food that I'm eating, then we apply pressure upwards,
Yes.
towards the processors, towards the enforcers of laws and all.
It's actually a food systems issue, because you have to trace back where your food comes from. Even in the market, you should be careful, because some of these healthy foods, quote unquote, have undergone some form of processing in terms of chemicals used. So you should be more aware in terms of what you're taking inside the body, and this is something that we can also advocate the government to be more vigilant on.
Let's take a break on that note. 27 minutes to 10. Stephen Tanui is a strategy and development manager at Wellness for Greatness Kenya, and Vivianne Odawa is a radiographer and a champion for healthy living. We are talking about obesity in Kenya. Tomorrow is World Obesity Day. Is obesity a problem in this country? Stephen says, yes, it is. Is it considered a disease in Kenya? Well, officially, no. Policy, no. It's just one of those issues. And we need to think about that. Let's talk about that when we come back out of this break.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
With Vivianne Odawa, she's a champion for healthy living, and Stephen Tanui, who is from Wellness for Greatness Kenya. We are talking about obesity in Kenya. Obesity is a big problem globally. Tomorrow is World Obesity Day, where we discuss very many issues about obesity. Just first of all, it's about creating awareness, and then talking about what to do to get out of this. Are there people who, from your experience, Vivianne, who talk about obesity, or do we talk about just weight? And of course, when you just think about your weight, you can't just admit, I'm obese.
No, I don't really want to talk about obesity. People talk about, I am overweight, my weight is big, I'm fat. When people are referring to you, they'll say that a fat person, or yeah.
Now, very many people, when they go and they do the BMI test and all, and it comes, within your weight, your overweight, that obesity, does it raise alarm bells? Or is it something that people just look at and say, okay, well, this is it, so maybe I can manage it, I can get better? Or does it mean, okay, I have even beyond overweight?
From experience, since the time I used to check my weight and all that, you'll be told you're obese, but then it doesn't bother you, so long as you wonder, like, okay, now what am I supposed to do about it? And like I said, my usual answer would be like, it runs in the family, yes, and as long as I can get clothes, what is the problem? And I remember I would joke around and say, as long as my vitenges can fit well. And of course, I'll go from village people, and they'll do for the Nigerians who will do for you very nice fitting. And of course, you tell them, make sure there's an allowance so that if
just in case.
Yes, and trust me, we used to go. I'll still go back and open the map, and until there's a time, there's a lady who was doing my clothes. I wore, and she told me, now I'm giving you a warning.
I am not adjusting this dress
fabric
anymore.
I've used it for your 2 clothes, so if you dare get fat, don't come back. Yeah, so when you talk about obesity, for majority of us, it doesn't mean anything until now it raises an alarm where you find maybe somebody has an issue, then you sit down and think. And this whole weight issue, again, it depends, it comes back to you. Once you are aware, then you wake up. When it hits you well, then you wake up and make a move. And people need to be advised. It's good to check these things early. When you see there's an alarm, something that can raise an alarm, just start doing it. Yeah, without being pushed, so that you live a healthy life. Yeah.
When you started making the changes, what you started making changes,
Yes.
you felt something different. What were those significant things that you say, okay, I've done this for some time and I can see that there's actually a change. I've done the other thing and I can see that, I feel like my dress size coming down a couple of numbers. What are some of those things that you then saw?
The first thing, initially I was thinking like it's just about exercising, but then I realized it's about eating right. And eating in portions. You just don't go and like, right now we want to go and do nama and we're eating everything we want. What I changed that now when I started seeing the change was just the food. Initially in 2015, I started going to the gym. By then I was weighing 115. I went up to 100. Then I stopped going to the gym. I was like, is it a must? I go, and there's this thing about as women, you go to the gym and you're told to do this and you're like, apana, give me some other exercise. You don't want to cooperate with the trainer. So in this weight loss journey, you need to work with your trainer, work with someone who guides you on nutrition. And again, you have to also be willing to do things right. Yeah, of course, now at times we say there's this cheat day. So you end up, once you start today, tomorrow it's a thing. The next week you do twice. And yeah, so for me, where I started seeing the change completely was when I adjusted my eating habits. And of course, now joined together with the working out. Yeah.
So is health here being considered to be someone who is free of diseases? Because somebody can have more fat than is considered good, but they are not unwell. There's no underlying ailment. There's nothing. Now, would you consider such a person to be healthy? This is what both of you can answer.
Well, if you're not living a healthy life, you wouldn't consider to be healthy because there are a lot of non-communicable diseases that are just at your door knocking.
Well, they've been knocking, yes, or they're probably giving me a shout that they're on their way, but they haven't quite arrived. This is the question I'm asking, because if somebody has more fat than the body actually needs or is considered healthy, and yet they're not hypertensive, they're not diabetic, so...
But there are some indicators that will show that you're unhealthy. You would climb the stairs and punch. You won't have any strength. There are just some indicators that you yourself, that's personal too.
I'm actually going with this hypothetical situation where those aren't even a problem.
Yes.
They climb stairs, they don't pant,
But they are what? They are overweight?
Yes, there's more. You see...
Or they are obese, but they don't have any of these issues.
You see, when people look at obesity and overweight, and they are synonymous, it's one and the same thing. And then it is associated with either disease that are on their way or disease that you already have. And I'm saying, to understand this matter better, if I have fat in my body that I don't need, but I do not have any disease, I'm not hypertensive, I walk up the stairs okay, these things that people keep talking about, I don't have. So
you won't really get it until it hits you. That's all I can say about that.
It's a silent killer.
It's a silent killer.
Is there a definition for healthy?
this is part of the question
what
that I'm
you're
asking. Yes, because...
What is healthy?
Yes.
Is
Being
it not
free-
sick?
Being free from disease.
Okay, then let me ask you differently. Can I be obese and thin?
Obese and thin, based on BMI, no.
You see, body muscle is denser than fat. So if I have body mass, based on the muscles that I have, or the building of it, I can actually look thin, look slim, and yet I am obese.
Oh, that's correct. Because people, let's say, who lift a lot of weight, sometimes they might have higher weight, and compared to the height, BMI would classify them as either overweight or obese.
You know this height thing? Yeah?
It's a
This height thing. It's a thing, because here, if you're vertically challenged, you have a problem. Okay?
You're condemned.
Yes. If your center of gravity is a little low.
Actually, let us speak of it, Stephen. What is BMI exactly?
BMI is kg per meter squared.
What should the best ratio be?
Sorry?
kg per meter squared.
Yes, your weight compared to your height.
kg per meter square kg.
So your weight over your height.
Your weight over your height.
Okay.
Yes.
So when we say that is the body mass index, why is it important that your weight matches your height? Why is it important?
It's a distribution issue.
There's this much your bones can hold.
Okay. Can the bones be heavy?
Yes, the
Because you can have, yes, your weight, blah, blah, but all this weight, like City is saying, it's coming from your muscle,
You can be big bone.
your bone,
Density.
but you're a short person.
But mostly it's classified as a male and female. It's
Okay.
different in terms of, it's standard in terms of being a man and being a woman.
You know this. Do what's on your mind?
I mean, look, I'm just saying that. For a lot of these things, you as an individual, you would then be able to feel if there was something that was going off, isn't it? And so I think that also certain times, if you do start working out, everybody who started working out and gone to the gym and started to build muscle, you realize that you can actually be heavier. But here we are also saying that, are you saying that you could be classified as obese because of the density of your muscle? However, if they ran everything, they would find that in comparison, you're still okay.
Yes. BMI is only used as an indicator, but once you visit a healthcare practitioner, it can be classified in terms of if you have a healthy weight or if you don't have a healthy weight.
You know, if you ask me, the battlefield here is being determined really by what we traditionally understand to be obesity, what we traditionally understand to be healthy, the optics of it, vis-a-vis the reality of what it is that ought to be the case. Because there is, for instance, a myth that people who are slim of body, essentially you're ectomorphic. The way God created you, you can try very hard to put on weight, but you're not really going to put on weight in the traditional sense of the word. So if you have such a structure, it is assumed that you may not be predisposed to some of these non-communicable diseases. So you hear people remark and say, but you know, that person couldn't have had a heart attack. You know, he was really slim.
Yeah, he's a slim guy.
Yeah, but it's how we view and what we believe and what we accept. How do we get people to understand that the traditional way in which we associate size and health, or what we consider diet and health, and the realities, how do you explain these things? Because in getting to ask someone to live healthy, lose weight, this is really what you're fighting with. Because if you come from a community where a big body is considered good, man, you're going to be hard pressed to tell me I should not be big bodied. Yes.
Vivianne was getting those compliments.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
And she goes, I'm like,
Yeah, boss.
All right.
ndugu yetu anafanya kazi.
There are very many misconceptions associated with this conversation, and this is something that we want to change, and that's why we emphasize on early intervention, trying to inculcate those issues on children so that they understand that it's not necessarily when you become big is when you're unhealthy. It's just working out and eating healthy. It's just something good for your life. In terms of the science, this is something that we can work on in terms of explaining to using age-appropriate language. But it's something that I believe it's been scientifically proven that healthy diets and physical activity has a correlation to being healthy.
Okay, now, healthy living, traditional food, traditional living, yes. Now, are we therefore saying that all traditional foods were good, that they were all healthy?
Most were good, since they were cooked well and they did not have any additions, and also they were fresh from the farm.
All of those things were boiled, not cooked.
But in terms of the cholesterol levels or the bad fat that it brings to the body, it wasn't really.
And then you talk about bad fats, you opened a completely new discussion.
Here we are. In terms of unlearning some of these habits that, obviously have taken time to learn, and then, if you're looking at having compounded over, did it take you longer, Vivianne, I'm not sure that you are measuring the time that you progressed, but then did it take you longer than it did to get where you were, to get out of where you had reached?
When I gave birth to my firstborn, that is, she's turning 20 tomorrow, I was around 75 kg. I delivered and I was still the same weight. But you see, there's this thing you want to eat for maziwa, yeah?
Of course.
To get, yes. And there's that jahe thing, and I remember my husband used to boil a lot of bones and take the soup. I started ballooning. But I was comfortable. Then I got my second born in 2007. Again, after delivery, baby fat doesn't go. I ballooned in 2009 again. I got my third born, went back to the same weight. I don't know what happened. At some point, again, I ballooned. And now it keeps just coming without you realize. You keep on changing clothes. They come, they new, you go buy, something is fitting, and you continue adding the weight without realizing. Then now, between when I started, that was on 24th September 2020. That's when I changed and started walking this weight loss journey. So far, I've done 30 kgs, but it's not easy because at times you add like 2 kg, 3 kg, you come, you reduce,
and
you
you're
go
still
down.
working out.
You're
You're
still
working out, and then you go
still-
and weigh yourself, and you've added
added
kilos.
weight.
Then
Yes.
What is this?
Okay.
And that is one thing that I think really makes people feel like, why should I work out? I remember in 2015 when I started going to the gym, I was like, no. And I went to the trainer and I'm like, why am I adding weight? And I stopped going. And I still balloon. Now, that time I was 100. I'd lost from 115 to 100. I still now went back until now I reached the 123 kg.
But Vivianne, there's something about age. As you age, hormones change, metabolism changes. So even as you eat, the way your body deals with the food, what it does with it, all these things are a factor.
True.
Plus happiness level.
Yes,
You've
definitely.
started a
And happiness
family,
level
you're
with
looking at your
yourself also.
babies, you're happy.
I remember when I turned 40. When I turned 40, someone sent me a text and she was like, now, remember your hormones are not going to cooperate with this, so forget about weight loss.
Pass.
Forget about weight loss. I remember just the other day she sent me a text and she's like, I want to lose weight. What changed? What changed?
There's a question that Lalji is asking. Can stress lead to obesity? He says, I find when I'm under stress, I get sugar pangs.
Yes. Your stress levels and your mental health, and even sometimes the medication that is recommended can make you gain a lot of weight and become either live with obesity or overweight.
There's a very direct relationship between stress and your immune system. Very direct. And there's something that is called comfort eating. Okay? You don't eat huge amounts of food, but you eat continuously. Okay? Now, part of the problems we may have as Africans is we have always been fairly comfortable with our body sizes. It's in the West where they have really issues where you need to be a proper size, you need to be the size of a broomstick, that sort of thing. Okay? Now, we but associating body size and look and considering health, I think there is no we like using the word silver bullet, but it has to be a continuous conversation, because just the diversity of human beings and everything that they represent, and the places they come from, the things that their bodies are used to, the genetics, all these things really are a genuine conversation. So even as one has this discussion, one has to consider the pertinent realities that people have to deal with when you're talking about healthy living, weight, obesity. Yes.
And where people are coming from.
Yes.
We want to thank you, ICF, for your final comment.
Also, this year, the World Obesity Day theme is changing perspectives. Let's talk about obesity. And I'm really happy that we have started this conversation here. And I thank you very much for inviting us.
People have asked, how can I get in touch with the Wellness for Greatness?
Also, we have our website, www.wellnessforgreatness.org. And we're also in social media, Facebook, Wellness for Greatness, Instagram, Wellness for Greatness, and Twitter, Wellness for Greatness.
How much to join?
Yes?
How much to join?
How much? We are an NGO, so we don't charge.
So just to interact with you?
Just to interact with us, and if you want us to do any work in your community, we can have that discussion and come up with projects that we can do. Yes.
Thank you very much for joining us today, and asanteni sana for all the information that you've shared, and congratulations on your weight loss journey and everything. You're looking good.
Thank you.
You're even you too. The people who are not watching, they can see that we have healthy people in the studio. Thank you very much for joining us. Vivianne Odawa is a radiographer. She's also a champion for health living. Stephen Tanui is from Wellness for Greatness Kenya. He's a strategy and development manager. We've been talking about obesity. Tomorrow, the world marks World Obesity Day.